4,500 years ago, while a lot of the world was just getting started, one civilization was already building cities so advanced they'd look familiar to us today. This is the story of the Indus Valley civilization. And it's not just about a lost world they rediscovered, it's about a discovery so big it forced us to basically tear up the history books and start over.
So, to really get just how much of a bombshell this discovery was, you have to understand the story everybody believed before it happened. Back in the early 20th century, the colonial view of India was pretty simple. It was a timeless land of villages, sure, but not a land of great ancient cities. It was a place that supposedly needed a little help from the outside to build its future.
And look, this wasn't just some casual opinion, it was a genuine tool of power. You had hugely influential thinkers like J.S. Mill, a guy famous for his writings on liberty of all things, arguing that British rule was a moral duty, and the mission? To civilize a supposedly backward India. The message was loud and clear. Your history isn't something to be proud of, it's something for us to come in and fix.
But then, shovels hit the dirt, and absolutely everything changed. The ruins they found at a place called Harappa didn't just challenge that myth, they completely shattered it. I mean, how could the supposedly uncivilized East have built cities with perfect grid layouts and advanced sanitation at the exact same time as ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia? All of a sudden, India had an urban history that was thousands of years old, incredibly complex, and entirely its own.
Okay, so how do you even find a lost civilization? Well, it definitely doesn't happen overnight. This was a real-life detective story, one that took decades to unfold, with clues just scattered all over the place.
The very first hints popped up way back in 1842, but for decades, nobody really knew what they were looking at. The real breakthrough didn't come until the 1920s. That's when Indian archaeologists like Dayaram Sani and R.D. Banerjee started digging at two different sites, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. And what they found was so similar, so incredibly advanced, that in 1924, the head of the Archaeological Survey, John Marshall, made this stunning announcement to the world. This wasn't just a city, it was a whole new civilization they'd stumbled upon.
And believe it or not, that was just the beginning. Since then, the map has just exploded. I mean, imagine finding not just 2 cities, but over 2,000 sites spread across what is now 3 different countries. We're actually still finding them. The city we now think is the largest one, Rakhigarhi, wasn't really understood until fairly recently. It just goes to show you how much more is out there waiting to be discovered.
All right, now this is where the story gets truly mind-blowing. Let's talk about how these people built their cities. I want you to forget everything you think you know about primitive settlements. We are talking about a blueprint for an ancient metropolis that seems impossibly modern. Let's really put this number into perspective. 4,500 years ago, the Great Pyramids in Egypt were being built, and yet over here, these people were designing cities with such precision that some have compared them to Chandigarh, a city that was planned in the 20th century. This was not an accident. This was pure engineering genius.
Their genius really came down to 3 core ideas. First up, order. Their cities were split into 2 parts, a raised citadel, probably for the elites, and a lower town for everybody else. Second, precision. The streets ran in a perfect grid, just like a modern city block. And third, and this is the real game changer, public health. They built these incredible underground drainage systems, connecting almost every single house to manage wastewater. That's a feature many cities around the world wouldn't see for literally thousands of years.
Just take a look at this. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro is the perfect example of their incredible skill. It's built from perfectly laid baked bricks, and they sealed the whole thing with bitumen, that's a natural tar, to make it completely waterproof. Now, this wasn't just a swimming pool. It was most likely a sacred space, a place for community rituals, and it was engineered to last for millennia.
Their cities also had these massive buildings called granaries, and these were not just barns. They were the absolute backbone of the economy. See, they had an organized farming system that produced huge amounts of extra grain, which they stored here, maybe even as a form of tax collection. This building was basically the city's bank and its supermarket, all rolled into one.
So the cities tell us how they lived, but it's the objects they left behind that tell us who they were. So let's take a look at some of their art, which gives us this really rare glimpse into the faces and maybe even the beliefs of these ancient people.
So, here he is. This is one of the most iconic sculptures ever found from the ancient world, the so-called Priest King of Mohenjo-Daro. And we call him that because, well, we honestly don't know if he was a priest or a king or maybe both. But what is undeniable is his calm, commanding presence.
The real secrets here are in the details. It's carved from steatite, which is a kind of soft soapstone. That intricate pattern on his shawl, it hints they knew all about skilled embroidery. His eyes are half closed, like he's deep in meditation or some kind of trance. Even the little fillet on his head and the armband are clues. Every single detail is like a tiny window into their world.
Okay, so from stone, let's move to bronze. This is the famous dancing girl, and she is an absolute masterpiece of metalworking. She was made using what's called the lost wax technique. It's a super complex process where you make a wax model, cover it in clay, melt the wax out, and then pour in molten bronze. For the time, this was incredibly high-tech stuff.
And get this, she's only 4 inches tall. But even so, she is just full of confidence and life. She's standing in this classic Tribhanga posture, a pose you see in Indian art for thousands of years after. Her left arm is just completely covered in bangles. This tiny little statue shows us not only amazing artistry, but a cultural connection across the ages that is truly stunning.
Now, beyond these big masterpieces, archaeologists have found thousands of these tiny, intricate seals. Each one is like a miniature work of art. You can think of them as the company logos or official signatures of their day, and they were absolutely essential for trade. And alongside those, you have countless clay figurines, which give us a snapshot of everyday life, their gods, their animals, and yeah, maybe even their children's toys.
And when you look at all this stuff, a couple of figures start to pop up again and again. First, on this famous seal, there's a seated figure surrounded by animals that many scholars think could be an early version of the Hindu god Shiva. And second, there's this mother goddess figure. They found tons of these. And even though they're often pretty simply made, the fact that they were in so many homes suggests a powerful, widespread belief in a goddess of fertility and life.
But here's the thing, for all of the incredible stuff we've managed to unearth, the Indus Valley civilization is still wrapped in mystery. We have the cities, we have the artifacts, but some of the most basic, fundamental questions, we still don't have the answers.
You know, like any great civilization, it had a life cycle. It started with small farming villages, which then grew into bustling towns. Then it hit its absolute peak, the mature Harappan phase, where they built all those incredible cities we've been looking at. But then, around 1900 BCE, something changed. The decline began. The great cities started to empty out. The whole system just began to fail, and it never recovered.
And that brings us to the 2 great mysteries that still haunt us to this day. First, we have thousands of examples of their writing, but we can't read a single word. The script remains completely undeciphered. And second, we still don't know why it all ended. Why were these magnificent, brilliantly planned cities just abandoned? Was it climate change, an invasion? Did their trade networks collapse? The answers are still out there, buried in the dust, just waiting for that one clue that will finally let the Indus Valley tell us its full story.